Pecha Kucha 150, Lobo, and Commission. Commission in quote marks, because typically you're supposed to get paid, and I didn't. So yes, that's right, I did actual art this week. But I should have done it 3 weeks ago. And when I say Lobo, I mean 90s Lobo. That's super duper important, because there are different Lobos based on different decades. I read a library book 10 years ago that was 90s Lobo, and I thought, you know what, I'd like to read some more of that. So once upon a time I went into a comic book store and I actually bought this trade paperback, and I read it, and now I'm going to talk to you about it. Surprise, surprise. So in the first story, Lobo is effectively forced to take his 4th grade teacher across the world, across the galaxy, to deliver her to the police organization he works for. 1, he wants to kill her because he's killed everyone else on his planet, and 2, she wrote a book about him that he doesn't like. Excerpts from that book are actually in this book, and it gives the background of Lobo. So this is an excellent trade paperback to own if you just want the one that is quintessentially the story of 90s Lobo. In a nutshell, he killed everyone else on his planet because he is the ultimate badass motherfucker. While Lobo is taking his former school teacher across the planet, they get kidnapped by a bunch of intergalactic spelling bee terrorist type dudes who hold competitions where you have to spell words, and if you get it wrong, they kill you. He survives this because every word he gets is related to murder somehow. That's the level of this book. It's ridiculous. And upon delivery of said teacher to said police organization, he promptly snaps her neck and walks off because he has his own way of doing things. And this is a plot twist only in the fact that that's what happened to the teacher's neck. You would have seen this coming on the second page. Second story where things descend and will continue to descend into farces, where Lobo is paid by the Easter Bunny to kill Santa Claus. Violence levels ramp up, art quality starts going down a bit. There were never any backgrounds really to speak of. The colours are bold and the violence is bolder. The art style simultaneously reminds me of old school 2000 AD and Frank Miller's work on its way to descending into chaos because of the bright colours. That reminds me very much of the second Dark Knight book, which is terrible. But it's not that the art is bad in this, it's just that's what it reminds me of. Lobo gets killed by that guy on the previous page, who neither me nor Lobo know who he is. He goes to heaven. He's suitably pissed, as well as being very naked. And he manages to convince them to send him back, but they don't like Lobo, so they fuck with him on this. This is one of the strange cameos from the DC universe you will see, where Etrigan refuses to take Lobo to hell because he's enjoying it too much. Heaven doesn't want him, hell can't handle him. This is 90s Lobo. They send him back as a woman into 1940s Britain during the Blitz because, I don't know, nobody at DC editorial is paying attention. It's so ridiculously British. I don't know if this is written by Americans taking the piss or British people being ironic and taking the piss. Lobo gets himself killed again twice, and then this is where we have a second weird cameo by Death from the Sandman. We'll call it franchise. It's just to remind you that this is actually happening within mainstream DC Comics, because who can fucking believe it? And you know, another story is Lobo goes to Comic-Con after accidentally destroying his copy of The Death of Superman. Now, if he's in the DC universe, how is he having that comic book in a world where he has technically been in a fight with Superman? Who fucking knows? Nobody cares, and that's Lobo. It's ridiculous, but it's like an alternative comic, and you just accept it like that, right? So a co-worker of mine from my new job wanted me to basically illustrate this picture. I couldn't talk my way out of it, so at the end of the day, I just ended up doing it. And as I do when it comes to these things badly. So I was experimenting with all the ways I could cheap out on this, using Photoshop layers and tracing the image and all of these things. And what I found is that I couldn't find a way that was cheap enough that didn't kind of just leave me cold. until I kind of gave up and decided to just try painting by numbers. So I just went through the entire picture and took all the major kind of key color points and drew them with lines, and then it was just, I'm just going to color pick, I'm going to fill these shapes I've made, I'm going to blend them using a blur or a smudge tool, and that's what we're going to have. So I started doing this, and because plans can't just work when it comes to art, I had all these gaps in between. So ultimately what I figured to do was use a base skin color to hide behind the white bits, because blurring over them just didn't really work, smoothing the shapes together. And then I took duplicates of the previous layer. I blurred one using one tool. I smudged one using a different tool that kind of creates a different shape merges. And then I kind of multi-layered them on top of each other to fill in the whites, to create a painterly type stuff, and then I started messing around with the layers. And this is effectively where it is. I look at this and I'm neither ashamed nor embarrassed, even though it's traced. But at the end of the day, this is painting, and I don't paint at all. It's color on top of color, mixed with color. This is not my thing. I did it, and I'm happy I did. Would have been nice if I'd got paid. But that's not how it works for me in art. So sad clown of the week is Lobo, but not 90s Lobo. It's New 52 Lobo. He was pretty much reimagined from the ground up. He is still a Caesarian, or whatever race of alien he is. He's still white, as in white, like a piece of paper. And he still kills people a lot. As any major reworking of any comic book character by any mainstream publisher goes down, it's not a surprise that there are a lot of people who do not particularly care for this version of the story. This video specifically by the Comic Storian is how I got caught up to date with this. 4 minutes of my life I don't need back, because he provided me with excellent information, and I never had to read whatever the hell it is they did to this guy, because I don't remember a bloody thing, because it's not entertaining. And it's not that I'm trying to say 90s Lobo is clever or anything, but what it is very much of its time. It's very memorable. The guy's a grunge rocker. He has probably beaten Superman in a fight, and he's quote unquote cool. Whatever that means, right? I was a child in the 90s, so he's one of those dudes. A lot of people I know give Space Jam a pass because they saw it at a formative age, and I give Lobo from the 90s a pass because that's what happened with me. Space Jam is a terrible movie because I didn't see it when I was a kid. I saw it when I was a grown-up, and there's no nostalgia shield for that shit. But 90s Lobo has one for me, so... That brings us to the end of Pecha Kucha 150. It's been almost 3 years completely of these. Maybe I'll do something special soon, maybe I won't, we'll see, but I'll see you next week.